Hello everyone, my name is Danilo Favato and I'm a researcher from Universidade Federal de Minas Gerais, Brazil. Today I'll be presenting a database reconstruction attack that I've demonstrated to be effective in re-identifying importers when it's conducted against Brazilian foreign trade statistics. Although my demonstration scope was limited, I think the workflow I'll lay down here can be applied to other countries and datasets. My explanation will be divided into three phases. First, I'll assume the data publisher role and their goals, restrictions, and choices for publishing their foreign trade statistics. Next, I'll take the adversary's role and explain the algorithm used. Lastly, I'll report my findings for the real case that I've investigated. So let's start by pretending I'm the Brazilian Tax and Customs Administration, and one of my jobs is to inspect foreign trade transactions for tax collection purposes. During this process, importers will be entering into my system their import declarations. These import declarations are like invoices. Here you can see the Australian example. They have all the transactions data such as the importer, exporter, value, weight, what was imported, tax paid, port of entrance, country of origin, and so forth. Periodically, I, the Tax and Customs Administration, government, am required to publish some data to fulfill some public interests while also respecting privacy requirements. On the public utility side, the disclosed data must allow the stakeholders to 1. Access products descriptions and verify if the price is within an acceptable range, so they can spot dumping practices, for example. It must also help the Tax and Customs Administration in spotting other illegalities, such as piracy and tax evasion. And third, it must allow the development of economic studies to support private entrepreneurs or public politics. On the privacy requirement side, the disclosed data must protect the importer's fiscal secrecy. This means that any data that could reveal specific details about a company's business, such as the value they paid, the amount they imported, and from whom they supplied, must be not made public. From this setting, I have to choose how to meet these opposing requirements. As I am a governmental agency, I'm more worried to appear right and simple than being scientifically right and complex. So I'll make some ad hoc decisions that will sound reasonable. Those are, I will split the data into multiple different datasets. One of the datasets will have all the transactions, but I'll remove all the business direct identifiers, such as name, address, and city. Other datasets will just have summaries by city and state and product type, for instance. And in one last dataset, I'll just put the company's registration information. I'll also omit from the database with the transactions details all transactions made for a product type that was imported by less than 4 companies. As a remark, although my narrative here is based on Brazil's legal framework and government decisions, I think that this scenario is similar for other countries. Now let's put ourselves in the adversary's shoes. 3 datasets are public available. De-identified transactions contain all the products imported, their value and weight. Summary by city contains all the total sum of weight and value by city. Importers contain registration data about the companies, such as their city. I, now the adversary, know that the totals shown in the summary by city were produced by partitioning the entries seen in the de-identified transactions. So I can use these totals as restrictions to our integer linear optimization program to find which partitions produce the totals seen here. Let's just make this more graphical so we can visualize how this is done. I will represent the transactions as rectangles. Their width is proportional to their value, and their height is proportional to their weight. The total scenes in the summary are points in the Cartesian plan. The dashed lines are boundaries that signal, when overflown, that the solution is invalid. The idea is to stack the rectangles by the border without overflowing the city's totals. As can be seen here, in a valid solution, all rectangles are stacked inside the region delimited by the dashed lines. Once I get a valid solution, I can try to swap some rectangles. I can try to take this green one here and place it in other city. As you can see, if I do this, I will end up with an invalid solution clearly shown by the overflow here. The algorithm used by commercial solvers implements a backtracking strategy that goes through all the possible states. Once this is done, I can gather all the possible states where the solution is valid and check if some rectangles can only produce a valid solution if they are in certain cities. For instance, I can draw all possible states and find out that in every single valid one, this green rectangle is placed in this city. I can say that this transaction is then locked into this city. This means that I have a mathematical certainty that this transaction went to some business based in this city. If this happens, and there is only one business based on that city, I can be sure of my re-identification. The algorithm described, which I think has a broader usage, was used in our particular case study. To apply it to the Brazilian official foreign trade statistics, we divided the attack into phases and steps. The goal of these steps was to try to lock the transaction into a single city. Once this is done, we just had to check if there was a single importer in that city so a deterministic re-identification could be performed. These are our results. In the end, we were able to re-identify more than 2,000 transactions. Although this represents just 0.9 of the total number of transactions, the value of these transactions is significant, more than $137 million. We also use quantitative information flow to measure the information leakage. Our multiplicative metric shows that this attack increases the chance of the adversary correctly re-identifying a transaction by 168 times. Some remarks. The results shown here only account for a single month of data, January 2021. The adversary we designed was computationally bounded. That means that we used a personal computer, an Intel i7 with 32 gigabytes, and the whole process took 62 hours of active processing, and we limited trying to find the optimization problem solution for 1 minute for each instance. Increasing that time could give some advantage to the adversary. The adversary that we designed was as weak as possible, and so it lacked geographical understanding. That means that we didn't use any type of geographical data that could aid in the attack. For instance, knowing that the business is near to a port of entrance of that good being imported could give some edge on the adversary, but we didn't use that. We didn't also use common sense about commerce. So, for instance, if an import of 2,000 tons of iron ore was going to a city that just had two business there, a hospital and a steel mill, we didn't. The adversary wouldn't know which one, but for a real case scenario, it's obvious that a steel mill is probably the imported behind 2,000 tons of iron ore. And also, we didn't use any past foreign trade data to aid in the knowledge of the adversary. But this data that we use for January is disclosed every month, and so a real-world adversary could do this exercise every month and gather information that would help him in attack. Wrapping up with some conclusions and discussion, the ad hoc disclosure control techniques used by the Brazilian government are insufficient to protect the business fiscal secrecy. After being informed about this vulnerability, the Brazilian Tax and Customs Administration removed the de-identified transactions dataset from their website and changed the importer's dataset periodicity. And lastly, foreign trade statistics are published by almost every country in the world, and they share some standardization, which means that the attack shown here could be of broader concern, but the steps and phases that I shown previously would have to be adapted to each case.